A young mother, Crystal Manji, and her husband, Robert, are gunned down in a busy parking lot in broad daylight. Unbelievably, the shooter is Crystal's own ex-mother-in-law.
We're here today in the Charles County Detention Center. You have agreed to sit down with Crime Watch Daily to tell your side of the story. Why is this important to you?
Because I need people to know what happened, the truth.
Now, in an exclusive Jailhouse interview, that shooter, Caroline Conway, is talking publicly about that terrible day for the first time.
So as far as the actual shooting, do you take responsibility for that?
I know they said it happened, and I know the evidence says that I did it, but I don't remember it.
And so you're saying to me here today, you do not remember?
No, ma'am, I do not.
She doesn't remember. This is the same woman who used a burner phone and arranged for a pickup with her son just moments after shooting her ex-daughter-in-law and her new husband.
Let's be real for just a second here, okay? I mean, there's no question in anybody's mind that Caroline Conway jumped in that Jeep and ended up shooting those two people. There's none.
But Conway's attorneys say there's no way anyone in their right mind would have designed such a flawed murder blueprint.
This is not the mind of a sane person at all, that would literally think not only could you commit a shooting in broad daylight with no mask on, but that you would walk away from it afterwards.
She claims the shooting is a blur, but Caroline Conway is crystal clear on what triggered her murderous rage, and it's a shocker.
You believe your grandchildren are still in trouble today?
I believe they're with their molesters still today, yes.
Yes, you heard her right. Caroline Conway is now claiming she thought her grandchildren were molested while staying at their mother's home.
You believe that, why?
Because my grandson told me, and we have evidence.
Crime Watch Daily reached out to the Virginia Department of Social Services, and they issued this statement in part. The only circumstances under which VDSS would be able to share information around an investigation would be in the case of a child fatality. We do not have records of any of those individuals being investigated under that particular criteria. But prosecutors take it one step further, claiming the grandmother was grasping for straws, looking for a defense.
Evidence shows what?
Well, the evidence shows there's no abuse. The charges that were leveled, the allegations, were found to be what they call unfounded. She just kept ratcheting it up. I'll say this, see if this works. I'll say something worse, see if that works. I'll say something even worse and see if that works.
But Conway insists a friend of Robert and Crystal, a man named Montana, nicknamed Tana, was sexually abusing the children, even though she had no evidence to prove it.
My grandson was showing signs of being molested. He started telling me things.
He confided in her more than anybody else. So when he told her, Caroline, Yaya to him, he says, Yaya, these things are happening to me, she believed him.
Caroline also claimed that when her grandchildren returned from their mother's house, they were filthy and showed signs of neglect.
Then Gracie came back with like blood-stained Pampers.
Blood-stained Pampers?
Raw Pampers, like it was all raw, like, I don't know. It was just really bad. When we took her to the doctor, he was like, it could be a bad rash.
In fact, Caroline's lawyer claims one of the reasons she snapped came when Grandma was flooded with her own bad memories.
This crime, and as far as I'm concerned, it goes back years and years and years, some 50 years to when she was a small child.
Defense attorney James Farmer says Caroline claims she was the victim of horrible sex crimes as a child.
When Caroline was 2 years old, some friends would sexually abuse and rape Caroline. It's something that she has suppressed. She had suppressed for decades. That did not come up even in her 20, 30-year relationship with her husband.
Did Caroline Conway ever admit to actually pulling the trigger?
She did not. Because of her psychological disorders, she does not have a concrete memory.
And not remembering what happened is just one defense Conway's attorney took to the jurors. Both Caroline and Richard Conway face separate trials on murder charges.
She does not remember squeezing the trigger.
The prosecution says memory loss is a crackpot theory and that Caroline and her son simply wanted Crystal out of the picture so they could have full custody.
They can come up with any other motive that they want to, but that was the real motive behind this.
they wanted the children with them all the time.
Exactly.
In court, attorneys picked apart the case like crows. The defense honed in on text messages between Crystal and Montana. They say the texts show Montana lived in the home with the couple and therefore had access to the kids.
And so, and this young child, alleges that Montana was in fact the person who may have been allegedly touching him.
That's right.
The state investigation never found any sexual abuse in Crystal's home, and Montana was totally cleared. The prosecution argued they could point to premeditated murder. First, the burner phone that Caroline used to call her son after the shooting was purchased about a month before the incident.
Richard got a young man, about 16, 17 years old, I think he was at the time. He gave him some ridiculous story about he needed a burner phone because as a police officer, he was working this huge narcotics case with some New Yorkers, and he didn't want to use his own phone. And Richard drove him over to the Walmart and sent the kid in there with cash. He got the phone, brought it back out, gave it to Richard, and that was that. And that was the phone that Caroline used as she's walking away from the scene to call Richard twice in order to pick her up.
Those phone records match?
Absolutely.
Also under the microscope, damning surveillance tape.
How important were all the video elements in this case for you?
They're critical. One, video corroborates people's testimony, and Crystal's testimony was corroborated. So the video from the Gale's house is extremely important.
Remember, the Gales were the Conway's friends who gave detectives surveillance footage showing Richard trying to discard the weapon used in the shooting into a white trash bag. And in a dramatic courtroom moment, Caroline took the stand in her own defense.
She explained what she could recall of the day and what was going on with the children.
But the jury didn't buy the long list of defenses. After a 2-week trial, Grandma Conway was found guilty on first-degree murder. Her son Richard, also guilty. Both will spend the rest of their lives behind bars.
Will she ever see the light of day?
I believe that everybody who's convicted by a jury of first-degree murder should stay in jail for the rest of their life. Because they have taken somebody from this planet and you cannot bring them back ever.
And from behind bars, Grandma Conway still adamantly stands by her story that her grandchildren were in grave danger. She's determined to keep fighting.
Do you in your heart really honestly believe your grandchild or grandchildren were touched inappropriately?
Yes, I do. They told me they hurt her, but nobody listened.
Up next, the man Caroline Conway accuses comes forward to set the record straight and fires some shots of his own.
Did anything ever inappropriate happen?